They trusted the wrong detour. A couple vanished on a remote U.S. road. No crash, no witnesses, no answers. Days later, one of them was found tied to a tree, barely alive, while the other was gone without a trace. What really happened out there, and why, is where this story turns terrifying. Before you settle in, I need you to do 3 things. Turn off the lights, put your headphones on, and listen carefully. Because tonight's story isn't just something you hear, it's something that follows you. If you're the kind of person who enjoys peeling back the layers of real-life horror, the moments that blur the line between coincidence and something far more unsettling, then you're in the right place. This channel isn't about cheap jump scares. It's about reflection. About asking yourself what you would have done differently, and realizing, too late, that you might not have done anything differently at all. The story you're about to hear is based on real patterns, real disappearances, and real mistakes, but told through a twisted lens. Names have been changed. Locations relocated. Details altered just enough to make you question whether that sense of dread creeping up your spine is imagination or memory. As you listen, I want you to ask yourself one thing. How well do you really know the person beside you? If stories like this make you pause, reflect, and look over your shoulder, subscribe, because this channel dives deep into the shadows others are afraid to explore. Like the video, because it helps these stories reach people who need to hear them. And comment below where you're listening from, because sometimes the scariest part is realizing you're not alone. The voicemail was timestamped 11:43 p.m., recorded somewhere along a 2-lane stretch of Highway 191 outside Moab, Utah, a place where cell service fades faster than daylight. It was Ethan Rowe's voice, shaky and rushed, like someone speaking while constantly looking over their shoulder. "Hey, if you get this, we're not where we're supposed to be," he said. Marla said it was a shortcut. "I don't think it is. That was the last confirmed trace of them." Ethan, 29, worked remotely as a freelance videographer. Quiet. Observant. The kind of guy who documented life instead of fully living it. Marla Benson, 32, was his opposite. Outspoken, confident, with a magnetic charm that made people trust her quickly. They'd been dating just under 6 months when they decided to take a reflective road trip through the American Southwest. No schedule. No hotels booked. Just long drives and open space. Friends later said the trip was Marla's idea. By morning, Ethan's phone was dead. Marla's went straight to voicemail. Their rented van was never returned. Search efforts didn't begin for another 36 hours. Time that matters when the desert decides to turn against you. And by the time authorities traced that final voicemail ping, one unsettling question had already begun to surface. Why did Ethan sound afraid of the person he was traveling with? Investigators retraced the couple's intended route and quickly noticed something strange. The shortcut Marla had mentioned in Ethan's voicemail didn't appear on any official map. No GPS record. No Park Service documentation. Just a thin, unnamed dirt road branching off Highway 191, easy to miss unless you were looking for it. Marla had been the planner. Her laptop history showed hours of research into scenic detours, abandoned landmarks, and roads less traveled. That phrase appeared repeatedly in her search history, almost obsessively. Ethan's searches, by contrast, were mundane: camera gear, battery packs, editing software. He trusted her with the rest. Witnesses later came forward, 2 separate motorists who recalled seeing a white rental van pulled over near a faded wooden sign that simply read, "No services beyond this point." One remembered a man pacing nervously beside the vehicle. The other remembered a woman standing very still, watching the desert like she was waiting for something to answer back. What stood out most was timing. The van should have reconnected with the main road within 40 minutes. It never did. No tire tracks reappeared. No surveillance cameras caught them exiting. When rangers finally drove the route themselves, they discovered something chilling. The road slowly narrowed, splintering into dry washes and dead ends, as if it had never been meant to lead anywhere at all. And yet, someone had chosen it. Someone had insisted on it. As the search expanded, detectives began digging into Marla Benson's past, expecting nothing more than a clean resume and a few expired leases. What they found instead was a trail that didn't quite add up. Marla had moved frequently. 7 states in 9 years. Always short-term rentals. Always leaving just before her lease expired. None of it was illegal, but it was deliberate. Her employment history told a similar story: marketing consultant, brand strategist, social media advisor. Roles that were easy to explain, hard to verify. Ethan had never questioned it. But one detail stopped investigators cold. 2 years earlier, a woman named Lucas Hale, a former partner, had vanished during a solo hiking trip in northern Arizona. At the time, it was ruled a misadventure. No foul play. But Marla's name appeared in the margins of the case file as the last person known to have seen Lucas alive. Ethan didn't know that. He also didn't know that Marla had searched for Lucas's name just 3 days before their own trip began. Or that she'd bookmarked several articles about couples who disappeared together, their bodies found bound or hidden in remote terrain. When detectives listened again to Ethan's voicemail, one line suddenly took on new weight. Marla said it was a shortcut. It didn't sound like trust. It sounded like hesitation. And for the first time, investigators asked a terrifying question. What if Ethan wasn't lost, but being led? The van was discovered 5 days after the disappearance, wedged nose down in a dry wash nearly 12 miles from the nearest marked road. From above, it blended perfectly with the rust-colored terrain, almost as if it had been placed there intentionally. There were no signs of a crash. The tires were intact. The doors unlocked. Inside, investigators found Ethan's camera bag on the passenger seat, carefully zipped shut. His wallet sat untouched in the center console. 2 water bottles lay empty on the floor, positioned side by side. But Marla's backpack was gone. More unsettling were the footprints. 2 distinct sets led away from the van, one confident and steady, the other uneven, dragging slightly at the heel. They moved in the same direction for nearly half a mile before only one set continued. Search teams followed the remaining prints until the sand hardened and the trail disappeared completely. Forensics found something else, a faint smear of blood on the inside of the sliding door. Not enough to indicate serious injury. Just enough to suggest restraint. Or resistance. That night, when investigators reviewed the van's GPS data, they uncovered a final anomaly. A waypoint had been manually entered at 10:57 p.m., a location deep in the canyon system, nowhere near any campsite or landmark. It wasn't labeled, but it had been saved. And only one person knew how to set it. Ethan's camera became the most haunting piece of evidence recovered from the van. The memory card was intact, carefully stored, almost as if someone wanted it to be found. The footage began innocently enough: wide shots of red rock cliffs, sunlight flaring across the windshield, Marla laughing off camera as she teased Ethan for filming everything. But as the hours passed, the tone shifted. The final clips were different. One video showed the van parked at dusk. The engine was off. The only sound was wind scraping across stone. Marla stood outside, her face half-shadowed, staring toward the narrowing road ahead. When Ethan asked where they were, she didn't answer right away. Another clip captured an argument. Ethan's voice trembled as he asked why they hadn't seen another car in hours. Marla's response was calm, too calm, as she told him to stop panicking, to trust her. The last recording was accidental. The camera lay face down, still rolling. Audio picked up a struggle. A sharp inhale. Ethan saying, "Marla, wait," followed by the unmistakable sound of zip ties tightening. Then silence. When detectives enhanced the audio, one chilling detail emerged. As Ethan struggled, Marla was humming softly, an off-key lullaby that matched a tune found in a video on her old social media account. A song she only hummed when she felt in control. Search crews found Ethan just before sunrise on the 7th day. He was tied to a juniper tree at the base of a narrow canyon, his wrists bound behind him, ankles secured with the same industrial-grade zip ties heard on the recording. Severe dehydration had left his lips cracked and bleeding, his skin sunburned and peeling. But he was alive. Barely. When paramedics cut him free, Ethan didn't ask where Marla was. Instead, he whispered, "She said this part was important." At the hospital, detectives waited until Ethan was stable enough to talk. His story unfolded slowly, fragmented by exhaustion and fear. Marla had told him the detour was about reflection, that people only understood themselves when stripped of comfort and control. When he tried to leave, she panicked. When he fought back, she tied him up. "She wasn't trying to kill me," Ethan said. "She wanted me to stay." The most disturbing detail came last. Marla had left him water. Just enough. Each morning, she returned briefly, stood at a distance, and watched him wake up. She never spoke. She just smiled, like she was waiting for something to change inside him. And then, on the 6th night, she didn't come back. Marla Benson was never reported missing. That fact alone shifted the entire investigation. While the public believed this was a tragic case of a couple lost in the desert, detectives quietly reframed it as something far more deliberate. Marla hadn't vanished. She had left. Credit card records showed a single transaction 2 days after Ethan was tied to the tree, a cash withdrawal from a small-town ATM nearly 80 miles away. Grainy security footage captured a woman wearing a wide-brimmed hat and oversized jacket, her face angled just enough to avoid the camera. But investigators didn't need a clear image. The posture, the gait, it was her. Even more unsettling was how calm her escape appeared. She hadn't rushed. She hadn't panicked. She had planned this. When detectives searched Marla's abandoned storage unit back in Nevada, they uncovered a journal. Inside were handwritten entries describing shared awakenings and breaking people down to their truest selves. One passage stood out. "Some people survive the reflection. Some don't deserve to." It wasn't her first attempt. 3 other names appeared in the journal. All former partners. All connected to remote trips. 2 were presumed dead. 1, Ethan, was the anomaly. And that, investigators realized, was why she'd left him alive. He was proof. Proof that her method worked. Proof that she could let go when she chose to. 3 weeks after Ethan was released from the hospital, his phone rang at exactly 11:43 p.m. The same timestamp as the last voicemail. The number was blocked. Ethan didn't answer it. He couldn't. He stared at the screen until it stopped vibrating, his hands shaking so badly he dropped the phone onto the floor. Seconds later, a voicemail notification appeared. Detectives later confirmed the call hadn't routed through any nearby cell towers. It pinged off a relay miles away, one typically used by prepaid burners, untraceable by design. The message was short. No breathing. No struggle. Just Marla's voice, clear and steady. "You did well," she said. "Most people don't." Ethan broke down when he played it for investigators. He said he recognized the tone immediately. Not threatening, not emotional. Proud. Like a teacher grading an exam. Phone records showed something even worse. The voicemail file metadata suggested it had been recorded days earlier, then scheduled to send. Meaning Marla had planned the call long before Ethan was rescued. Long before anyone knew he'd survive. She had never intended to check on him. She already knew the outcome. From that moment on, Ethan refused police protection. He stopped giving interviews. Moved without telling anyone where. Because the truth had finally settled in. Marla wasn't watching him anymore. She was looking for someone new. Once Ethan disappeared from public view, investigators quietly widened the scope of their search, not for Marla herself, but for the pattern she left behind. They found it hiding in plain sight. Across the last decade, at least 5 unsolved cases shared unsettling similarities. Couples or close partners traveling through remote U.S. locations, one person surviving under extreme circumstances, the other vanishing without a trace. Each survivor described the same strange detail, a moment when their partner insisted on a detour, a pause, a place meant for reflection. The genders varied. The states changed. The names never repeated. But the method did. Marla didn't choose victims randomly. She sought people who observed rather than acted. People who deferred decisions. People who trusted deeply. Ethan fit perfectly. Detectives realized something else too late. Marla never stayed long after the test was complete. She didn't need to watch the aftermath. Survival itself was the result she wanted. One analyst described it best in an internal memo. She doesn't disappear people. She edits them. And then came the final quiet discovery, an online forum buried deep in the web. No usernames. No profiles. Just anonymous posts describing awakening retreats in isolated terrain. One recent entry ended with a familiar phrase. Most don't survive the reflection. But the ones who do, never forget. Ethan never told anyone where he went. But 6 months later, a park ranger in northern Maine reported something strange. A man sitting alone at a remote trailhead long after sunset. No car keys. No backpack. Just a camera placed carefully beside him, pointed at the trees. The ranger asked if he needed help. Ethan smiled and said, "I'm just making sure I don't miss anything." That camera was later recovered, abandoned but undamaged. The footage showed hours of stillness. No movement. No threats. Just Ethan staring into the darkness as if waiting for it to move first. The final clip was recorded just before dawn. Ethan spoke calmly into the lens. He said he finally understood what Marla had meant about reflection, not because she was right, but because she had changed him. He no longer trusted shortcuts, or guides, or people who promised clarity through isolation. Then he said something that made detectives uneasy. If you're watching this, she's already moved on. And if she found you before you found yourself, I'm sorry. The video ended. Ethan was never seen again. No body. No struggle. No evidence of foul play. Just the unsettling possibility that the reflection didn't break him. It taught him. If this story left you uneasy, that's the point. Because the scariest truths aren't about monsters hiding in the dark. They're about the people who walk beside us, quietly steering the direction we trust without question. Stories like this aren't meant to be consumed and forgotten. They're meant to linger. To make you pause the next time someone suggests a shortcut. To make you question why isolation is so often disguised as clarity. If you believe reflection can be just as terrifying as confrontation, subscribe to this channel. Every week, we explore stories that don't just scare you, they ask something of you. Like this video if you felt that moment of discomfort, because that's where awareness begins. And share your thoughts in the comments, not just what scared you, but what stayed with you after the story ended. Because somewhere out there, someone is planning a detour right now. And the only difference between a story and a warning is whether you choose to listen.